which is if we're going to create rituals, really, we're doing that whether we like it or not. The habits we create are being created every day by choice, consciously, or unconsciously, just by lack of not doing something. You are creating a habit and a ritual. And that leads us into how do we face life's challenges with tenacity, and how can we face these challenges using what we've already learned here with creating the rituals, controlling our mindset through focus and proximity. And how do we face the challenges of life, both in our personal and our professional business? Because everything's in transition right now. The world is uncertain. All three of us are entrepreneurs. We've all worked as employees in our earlier parts of our life. But that transition that we're going to have to go through, each and every one of us in this COVID-19, is really critical. Where's our focus? Is this an opportunity or not? I believe everything is working out for the good, right? And we're blessed, basically. We're blessed in every opportunity. So what is that, guys? How do we face life's challenges of life in a personal and professional business transition like we're going through, and really execute on being tenacious? Go ahead there, bud. Graham.
Well, big question. How do we do that? One thing, I mean, there's several things that strike me. You know, diet, exercise, sleep. I mean, those are, as much as people talk about it, we're usually pretty lousy at managing that. And, you know, I got to confess, I mean, my exercise regimen has fallen apart during COVID-19. My diet's good. My sleep is, you know, I've really focused this last year on more sleep and better sleep, because I was doing some studying and some reading, and I realized that I recognized in myself symptoms of being chronically sleep deprived. And when you recognize that sleep is the time that your body heals itself and the time that your mind can solve problems unconsciously, it's just so critical to improve that aspect of your life. Another habit is the last 5 minutes of your day, or in that last hour, having your bedtime routine, but planning your following day. Just 5 minutes spent planning your next day is going to make your following day ridiculously more productive. And it's amazing how that sets the tone for succeeding in tenacity. You talk about proximity, Heath, and proximity to people that exude the traits and characteristics that you want to emulate. And that's having conversations just like the one that we're having now, that edify and build up and encourage. And it's so important. Feed your soul, you know, and it's not just you know, I mean, thankfully I'm ridiculously busy with work, with 3 different businesses right now, but that includes, you know, now making personal time as well. And a lot of times you've got people during this time that are crazy busy. I was talking with one supplier this week that his company's gone from $12 million a year to over $200 million a year because of this pandemic. And talk about hanging on for a wild ride. and the tenacity required to come out the other side without blowing up and losing all the things that you've worked for is just as real a risk as if he just had moderate growth. Yeah, those are a few things. I'll pass it to you, Bob.
Thanks, bud. Well said. No, good, very excellent comment. The question, the thing that I thought about is children, and we're all fathers. And I've intentionally raised my children, understanding in my own way that character skills are really important in children as they grow up. I wanted my child to be independent and be successful in life, that they'd have to develop character. And it strikes me that when children are born, that they all have an equal amount of character. So things like courage and integrity and honesty and tenacity are all in every child when they're born. They're inherent, they're waiting to be developed. And I read something maybe about 3 or 4 months ago where a parent was speaking about that they had made a mistake, that they had cared for their children, they provided food and clothing and a house, but they hadn't intentionally raised their children with values and ethics and morals and character. They just didn't think about it. They weren't taught that that's maybe something parents should do or could do, maybe not should do, but could do. And so I think that, I remember my daughters, one of my 2 daughters is 5 years old, and we're on the Kettle Valley Railway in the Okanagan, and we're probably doing about 7 or 8K on bikes together. And she's got her new bike, and we're on the very, very flat, like a 3% grade, but there's one dip in the railway, and I kind of went down the dip, and then I stopped at the bottom and waited for her to come down, and she looked a little uncertain at the top of this dip, and she came down, and you could see her handlebars doing this, right? Handlebar doing this, and boom, the bike jerks off to the side, and she goes right over the handlebars, and she crashes face first and skids 3 feet on this sharp gravel railway bed, right? And so I go over to her, pick her up, and I picking the stones out of her face, and blood's gushing down. So I get my water bottle, I wash it all off, and I staunch the bleeding, and she's crying, of course. And so I let her cry. And then I said, okay, you done crying? And she said, yes. And I said, great. And I said, we've got 4 more kilometers to go. Let's go. And I put her back on her bike, and she just went ahead, right? And for me, that was an important lesson. It's an important lesson. Is that an important lesson in tenacity or just stupidity on parents' part? I'm not sure. But we sometimes talk about that in terms of her getting knocked down and getting right back up again and finishing the ride, right? And so there's been 2 times, probably in the last 3 years, she's 22 years old this June, that I've used that example. I've used it once, and she's used it once, about overcoming something and moving on. And I thought there was a lesson there. There was an intentional lesson. It was an opportunity. I took the opportunity, and I think that's how you build character. I think that's how you help children build character. But I'm intentional about my lessons in life, my pains, my knockdowns, my wife's knockdowns. And I think every time you get knocked down, there's an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to build courage, build resilience, build these character skills.
A couple things that have hit me through this discussion, some quotes that I like, is one that Charles Swindoll quotes, that we're all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. Life is really just a series of circumstances and situations. And quite often, as you so eloquently said, Graham, is that we feel overwhelmed and don't quite know how to respond. But what you said is, if you can visualize, you can see, you can focus on that outcome and our why, then we're able to seize that moment better, because chance favors a prepared mind. And if we're focused on where we want to go, we're more likely to make the turn, even if we're going in hot, as you said in your bike story. If we're looking at the point at the exit of that turn, that bike is going to bank and lean and head there. If we look at the wall or we look into the bush, it's funny how we end up right where we looked. So how we respond in our circumstances is really our choice. And it really comes back to how we've set ourselves up for success. How are we preparing? How are we choosing to respond in these moments?